Ladies and gentlemen, you will notice that we are starting on the dot. Very unusual in the system. This is UNICEF, which of course is always different to the rest of the system. We are following UNICEF rules. I want to wish you a very warm welcome on behalf of the North-South Round Table here today. And we want to start by reading a message from the Secretary General, who was invited, but for obvious reasons, the General Assembly is on, who could not come. And he thanked us for the invitation, but then I'll read the substantial part of the statement. He expresses the Secretary, this was written by his Chief of Staff. The Secretary General appreciates your kind invitation to this important event. He noted the remarkable efforts made by the North-South Round Table to contribute to the reflections aimed at addressing pressing global issues. As implied by the themes of the conference, North-South Round Table on Peace, Poverty and Sustainable Development, retrospective and prospective, this final roundtable will indeed provide the occasion to take stock of the road traveled and the goals achieved over the last decade. Furthermore, the theme also recognizes and encompasses many of the issues still being discussed by the world's nations, which also features high on the agenda of the United Nations, which regrettably he cannot attend. So I think this is a very important message, and the Secretary General obviously wants to get the report of this roundtable for his consideration. When he founded the original roundtable, King Arthur intention was to put an end to war, put down lawlessness and build peace. So that a woman with a babe in her arms could walk harmless from sea to sea. And of course today we want to say that women will help the United Nations, states and other places. Our intention is quite similar. Over the years, the North-South Round Table has stayed ahead of the intellectual curve, confident before they appear, challenging settled ideas and putting forward fresh ones, stimulating new ways of thinking about old problems, and above all, seeking solutions. Barbara Ward, Lady Jackson, set the tone for the round table right at the beginning. She was ruthlessly practical, but had a deep moral sense. I think we owe to her the concept that the rich countries should obligate a fixed percentage of GNP for development assistance. That beautifully simple idea combining the why of development with the how has been the international benchmark ever since. Sadik, I just named because he is a compatriot of mine, was perhaps more of a strict development economist than Barbara Ward, but he shared her moral concerns. He comes from a family background with deep spiritual engagement and is shown through all of his work with the round table. I was one of the many people in the United Nations who watched with admiration in the late 70s as Jim Grant refined the mission of UNICEF, where we are holding our meeting, and sharpened its profile. Jim had unique charisma and ability to shape complex issues in a simple way. But at the same time, he was a very shrewd and practical leader. He did a wonderful job for the world's children. I think his main contribution to our thinking at the round table was to show us what the United Nations could do in advocacy for development. And I'm very pleased that we have an element here today. Mahbubul Haq, and I mentioned him only also again because he was a compatriot, was my friend and mentor for many years, and I remember him with deep affection. He was chairman of the North-South Table from 1980. At a particularly difficult time for those of us who care about development. The prevailing attitude in those seemed to be to shrink government, go for economic growth, and let the fundamentals such as health and education take care of themselves. The African famine of the 80s weren't a result of runaway globalization, but the international community's failure to develop a coherent response is one consequence of the 80s approach to globalization. Deeply opposed to this, Mahbubul Haq developed a concept of human security that places people rather than econometrics at the core of our commitments. His genuine concern for people, something that touched all of us, turned human security from an abstraction into a powerful, practical idea. Under his leadership, the Round Table took on the search for a new development paradigm based on the dignity of human life, not only on its productivity. As he said, and I quote, "To overlook the human dimensions is not only a human tragedy, it is also a grave economic mistake." His friend and colleague, Amartya, has deepened and broadened this concept, and I'm especially grateful to him for giving substance to what I have always known but could not prove, that the full, fair and equal participation of women is essential for the economic success of the democratic state in the 21st century, and I hope people listen to him. Richard, and I'm saying something about you, even though you are on the program, Richard, I know there are nights now, a night of the last round table. For the wonderful, worthy and wonderful successor to Mehboob in leading the Human Development Report for the UNDP. Though he will never admit it, he has been so as important as anybody in the last 50 years in ensuring that human beings are the focus of development. Maybe he will admit it, I don't know. After 15 successful years in UNICEF, he succeeded Mehboob in UNDP, leading the work of the Human Development Report. Structural adjustment with the human face wasn't just a slogan for Richard. In Richard's hands, it became a plan of action and a reminder to government and the general public alike of what and who development was for. Now he is working on the UN Oral Intellectual History Project. I know that Louis is working with him, expects to get the Nobel Prize, along with his co-workers. I hope this will jumpstart the process of recognizing the contributions of the United Nations in the past and its essential role in the future. We have so many urgent questions to occupy us. One of the most important is how to bring human security to the forefront of the global economic considerations and link it up with long-term environmental and development issues. Women's empowerment, gender equality is very much part of it and still does not receive the consideration despite the great contribution of Amartya Sen in development of freedom and other work. Achievement of the MDGs, which in fact the Secretary General is very concerned about, depends absolutely on the willingness of countries and the international community together with the civil society to recognize the centrality of human security as an approach to development and to long-term peace building. But more on Amartya later. The difference that the North-South Roundtable has made, I believe, is to insist that a focus on the individual person, male and female alike, is not only an ethical but also a practical approach to present problems and future solutions. The theme runs through in history from beginning to end in the history of the North-South Roundtable. We have not succeeded yet, obviously, but as Barbara Ward put it 50 years ago, we have a duty to hope. I would now like to introduce Anne Veneman, who wants to say a few words of welcome before I introduce Amartya Sen, who will be being